This is Justin's famous 0-second goal in the Season 5 World Championships. And this was when the Peeps won Dreamhack against the best pros in the world. Together, these are 10 of the most iconic moments in Rocket League history. We're going to kick it off with one of the most intense matches of all time, at the RLCS Season 8 World Championships in Madrid, where teams would compete for their shot at $200,000 and a world title. In the semifinals, we found Team Dignitas facing off against the defending world champions, Team Vitality. Many expected Vitality to run away with this series since Dignitas had barely cemented the last world spot after almost being eliminated in the first round of the European playoffs, but would reverse sweep Barca Esports and defeat Mousesports to be here. While the fire that fueled Dignitas to pull that off was present here, live and on stage. Games 1 through 5 were neck and neck, with Vitality taking the first game by 1 goal. Dignitas retaliated in game 2, taking it 3-1, which was followed by another close match ending 4-3 for Vitality. This pattern continued to game 5, where Yukio would clutch up in overtime, forcing the series to game 6. The matches leading up to this may have been intense, but the overtime this game brought surpassed all expectations. Even with constant pressure and shots on target, a goal could not find its way to the back of the net until over 5 minutes of overtime.
You go.
This goal forced Game 7, where ultimately Dignitas would lose to the defending world champs in heartbreaking fashion, a 1-goal game. These 7 impactful games showed just how incredible the highest level of Rocket League esports can be in front of the roaring crowd, where this would turn into the last land for over 2 years. Although we've also had moments where just 1 goal in particular made for a memorable moment. Professional Rocket League changed in a major way from the start of RLCS Season 4 to the end of Season 5. At first, it brought a much less mechanical game, with a sizable percentage of viewers mistaking playing mechanically as risky or considering any solo play as careless. But there was a defining moment from a certain Canadian player that started the transition. SquishyMuffinz was known for his flashy plays and was looked up to as a star player in the community by his dedicated fans before he ever went pro. He had a slower start than others in the RLCS due to personal reasons, then failed to qualify with his team as the #1 seed for North America. But that didn't stop Squishy from rising to the top of the free agent pool. And when he made his debut in the RLCS with Cloud9, he qualified for the Season 4 World Championships. It was this ceiling shot goal from him that was a turning point for mechanics in the RLCS, and this was for a few reasons. It was one of the most skillful goals scored in the RLCS to date, it was done on the biggest stage under all the shining lights, and it was pulled off very early for its time, revolutionizing the ceiling shot for future seasons. Similar to the previous Dignitas situation, Squishy and Cloud9 would lose the series even after this play. But the shot was made iconic from being promoted by major sports outlets and having influential figures outside of the Rocket League scene talk about it, even when they may not have understood the level of mechanics it actually took.
Somehow gets it in from the ceiling and he carries it over into the net. That was insane.
Squishy may have brought a new era of mechanics, but there was another pro player that invented a shot to be used in competitive play, who was Cookser97. He's one of the few pro players from Season 1 that is still around and can hang in the RLCS. Cookser began his career playing Rocket League's prequel, SARP PC, and because of this he dominated in early years of the esport and won a world championship in Season 2. But it was the shot he imagined that truly made an impact for years to come, the Cookser pinch. While players may have known about something like a ceiling shot, just choosing not to go for it because of the difficulty and risk, the Cookser pinch on the other hand was something people didn't even think to go for. Scoring this never before thought of shot in the RLCS was Cookser's challenge, where he of course would succeed.
Makes the touch. Oh, what? No way. Are you kidding me? Look at this pinch from Cookser.
Oh, and a great pinch.
He did it! He did it!
The Cookser pinch.
Cookser is going to need a pinch here, and we've seen this before.
Oh, no.
And he'll do it again!
Not only was it impressive that he pulled it off in the RLCS, but that he would do so consistently. We would see players replicate the shot over time, and it would become standard practice used in competitive play, unlike other mechanics found in recent years that fell off due to them being unreliable to pull off at the highest level. Cookser and his pinch paved the way for new mechanics to be discovered and implemented to competitive play, as well as all the variations we would see come from the mechanic. Now, we've all seen our fair share of teams dominate over the course of a short period of time or a single tournament, but no team comes close to the extent that the Gale Force aka Dignitas roster did. After Cookser would win Worlds in Season 2, Northern Gaming would qualify as the last seed in Europe with their starting roster for the next Worlds. Due to one of their players, Maestro, having exams during this time, Northern Gaming would have their substitute Turbo Pulsa play for them instead. As a shock to many, Northern Gaming would go on to win the World Championships with their sub, giving Turbo his first world title. While this was happening, a team that barely missed out on qualifying had their eyes on that Grand Finals match. That team was Gale Force Esports with ViolentPanda, a well-respected player who came second at Season 2 Worlds, and after Season 3, Gale Force would create a power team that would impact the RLCS for years to come. They picked up Turbo from Northern Gaming along with K-Dop from Mocket EU, the team that lost to Turbo in the Grand Finals. This new Gale Force roster would go on a hot streak of winning like we've never seen before. They won the European Championships in Season 4 before defeating Method at Worlds for Turbo's second world title. And they didn't do any kind of slowing down, following this up with another European Championship and a back-to-back Worlds win in Season 5 after being transferred to Dignitas. Galeforce, now Dignitas, would prove to be the best in their region yet again, taking the Season 6 European Championships, but would finally fall to North America's Cloud9 in the Grand Finals. With their streak now over, K-Dop would leave the team and go on to win the next Worlds with his new team Vitality, while Turbo would win the one after that with his new team NRG. This was the end of the biggest dynasty we've ever seen, but left to be talked about for the ages. This was also part of the story of how Turbo had secured his title of a 4-time world champion, while also being the first RLCS player to have a EU to NA transfer on NRG. And Turbo's new teammate had quite the RLCS statistic of his own. To this day, there has only been one player to compete at every single RLCS World Championships, and that player is GarrettG. But season after season, while Garrett may have qualified, his teams would underperform when it counted most, leaving the LAN veteran to not have a single World Championship title under his belt. Every loss and early exit from the LAN would crush his competitive spirit, but after they wouldn't perform to expectations, once again, being upset and eliminated by the OCE team Chiefs in Season 4, Garrett would tweet this: "Regardless of what happens, I'm not going to stop until I get to lift that trophy." Even after this though, season after season, Garrett would come close to a championship but wouldn't pull it off. However, like Garrett said, he wasn't going to give up. And going into RLCS Season 8, something was different. Garrett's team had the likes of Justin and TurboPulsa, a player who knew exactly how to win a world championship along with the proclaimed best player in the world. After a fierce bracket, NRG would find themselves against the previous world champs Vitality and would go up 3-2 in the series. After a close call and a 1-goal game, Vitality would force the series to a final match of the tournament. It looked like Garrett's dreams of a world championship may have been slipping away. Game 7 was scoreless for nearly 3 minutes until Justin would score the most important demo goal of his career. The clock would tick down, but with 33 seconds left after a demo on Justin, Ferry would control the ball into a dunk and a 3-player 50-50 for Vitality would tie the game up 1-1. This forced the match to Game 7 overtime. Nerves were high, and with 21 seconds in, a demo on K-Dop and precise pass from Garrett left Justin with a redirect barreling down to Vitality's net, and 764 days after Garrett's tweet, NRG had done it, winning the Season 8 World Championships, and he had finally lifted that trophy. The intensity of this series was something we knew Worlds would always bring, along with these miraculous storylines showing from even the first ever RLCS World Championships in 2016, back when iBuyPower had qualified and when Kronovi was known as one of the best players in the world. At that event, iBuyPower used their substitute OverZero for the LAN. He wanted to prove that not only could he step up to the task, but that he could exceed the level of gameplay anyone thought he could, and OverZero truly pulled this off. Along with one of the most mechanical pro players in Lachinio, the team had taken out the favorites in Flipside Tactics in the first round, swept the Flying Dutchman in the upper semis, beat Northern Gaming in the finals, before going into a rematch with Flipside Tactics in the grand finals. This may have been OverZero's debut RLCS tournament, but you never would have guessed it from the way he enabled his team and showed up when it mattered. iBuyPower would win the first ever Worlds, and OverZero would be promoted to one of the team's starting players while they went on to be signed by G2. Unfortunately, the success wouldn't last long, and they would finish second last in the next season, and OverZero would go under the radar in the scene. But their performance truly made for an iconic moment on top of Rocket League's first #1 player Kronovi to be the first one to win RLCS. Let's go back to a situation with a team most of you have probably never heard of. It's 2016, the RLCS is yet to be produced, but for competitors at the time, they would focus on the first ever tournaments like Rocket Royale and ESL for nothing more than a few $100s in prizing. This iconic moment took place in the grand finals of the RLC Pro League, where we saw Flipside Tactics take on Crown and Jewels in a best of 9 for over $5,000, the biggest prize pool at the time. Crown and Jewels had a star player in Pashy90, a SARP vet and player known for his dribbles and fakes to be witnessed in his old montages. They would face a strong competitor in Flipside, a team that taking a game off of would be considered an achievement to most. But in this series, they had taken them to a Game 9. Keep in mind this was in an era where passing plays weren't expected much, even at the highest level, but this Crown and Jewels roster was so ahead of the curve. This showed when Flipside would lead in the match 2-0. It was looking like a tough comeback for Crown and Jewels, and with less than a minute left, Pashy would pull off a crucial bump on the last Flipside defender, with killer number 7 finishing the shot for their first goal. With 10 seconds remaining, it still wasn't looking great, but an iconic 3-man passing play was enough to pull off a miracle. And for the overtime, I'll let you watch for yourself.
One goal to win it all.
One goal will decide it all. Crown and Jewels back United. Back to the goal. And like that, Crown and Jewels are the Season 1 Rocket League Central Pro League champions.
It may not have been an RLCS stage, but these two teams would show us what was yet to come for the future of competitive Rocket League. Pashy would go on to become a top player in the RLCS with a second place finish at Season 2 Worlds, and this was an iconic moment especially for the few a part of the tiny player base in comparison to today. Several years later, we would witness the greatest lower bracket run we've ever seen. This was pulled off by Cloud9 in Season 6. This would happen after stopping the Gale Force dynasty at Dreamhack Atlanta before they were signed and known as the Muffin Men. They proved that they could compete after losing to them in Game 5 during Swiss, but getting their revenge in the Game 7 of the Grand Finals to win it all. Though this wasn't the RLCS, and Gale Force was still at the top in the most important competition. Cloud9 would attempt to take down Gale Force, now known as Dignitas, when they would qualify for Season 6 Worlds. However, this young team of talent lost in their first series, putting them into the lower bracket. If they lost again, they would be out of the tournament. Cloud9 would start their run sweeping Tainted Minds, then beating NRG, Flipside Tactics, the Chiefs, and finally Weedham Girls in their rematch. With that, Cloud9 had found themselves in the Grand Finals against Dignitas, where they would need to bracket reset and beat them in 2 best-of-7s in order to win. This was unheard of coming from the first round of the lower bracket, but if any team was to do it, it was Cloud9. And after taking them out 4-1 in both, Cloud9 had just created the most iconic lower bracket run and completed it against the Dynasty roster in yet another major tournament. While some RLCS teams have come close to matching this lower bracket run, none have been successful in doing so to this day. One of the greatest instances of winning when no one thought you could took place at Dreamhack Montreal in 2019. The Peeps were a roster of young players with dreams of competing with the best, starting out as a top team in the RLRS. Gyro, Mist, and Reddles had been promoted to the RLCS after an amazing season and promotional playoff performance. While the Peeps may have earned a spot in the RLCS, they still only took down the worst North American teams, and that's not to mention the top European teams that they would need to beat here at Dreamhack. Practically no one expected them to do much at this event, which made sense as they lost to Dignitas in their first series but would advance to the second day after beating an OC RLCS team. Day 2 is where they started to make the doubters unsure as they would take down Ghost from NA and more notably TSM. And this is where their underdog run would really start to ramp up. Now qualified to the playoff bracket, they had another strong European team in Mousesports now in the way. Fans that thought them getting here was due to a fluke were quickly silenced as the Peeps would take out Mouse 3-2. Now they would have to face off against the previous world champs Team Vitality, and against all odds the Peeps managed to come out on top with a 4-2 victory. With everyone second guessing themselves, they would finally play against G2 in the grand finals, and the Peeps would make a name for themselves in the best way they could, by winning it all. After the win, they went on to qualify for the Season 8 World Championships as North America's second seed and finished top 6 in the world. Today, all 3 of these players are on different top teams in the RLCS, and the iconic Dreamhack victory made for the ultimate Cinderella story. Now everyone knows about the famous 0-second Justin goal. And I say that because similar to Squishy's ceiling shot in Season 4, it was promoted to mainstream sports outlets such as ESPN and overshadowed Squishy's goal as the clip everyone knew about from Rocket League Esports. The newly turned 15-year-old rookie made his debut in the RLCS qualifiers with his team Out of Style. While they failed to qualify for the RLCS, Out of Style had still qualified for the RLRS for a chance to be promoted next season, where Justin had quickly cemented himself as the most valuable player in the lower league. He became known for his mechanical outplays and unreal goals, and after a 6-1 record in the RLRS, Out of Style had promoted to the RLCS after taking out the bottom 2 teams. Arguably, Justin had single-handedly brought his team to this level, and this proved to be possible when we saw Out of Style have a downfall the moment Justin left to join NRG. In the RLCS, Justin would continue to prove his mechanical ability and went undefeated in league play and qualified for the World Championships. NRG would make a run to the Grand Finals against Team Dignitas, where history would be made. After an intense series, Justin would pull off the most clutch 0-second goal we have ever seen, saving his team and bringing the World Championships to a 1-goal overtime in Game 7. Just like Squishy's ceiling shot, Justin would go on to lose in unfortunate fashion after pulling off what seemed impossible. The shot still remained iconic because it showed the highest level of competition and how anything can happen in the esport when you have a rookie hungry to prove himself to the world. While the loss would have stung knowing Garrett's history as well, at least they could poke fun at the situation later on. NRG would of course go on to win a World Championship, showing the rise of this team, which turned out to be the opposite for Justin's former teammate Lichinio, showing the downfall of this previous world champion. Check out this video to see how that happened. Also, 97% of you are not subscribed to the channel, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content. This has been ShadowR, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.